Hello and welcome to Salem Connections, a show about the people who make Salem work. I'm Josh Turiel and I'm hosting this show after 33 years living in Salem and 10 years on the City Council. We all talk about news and politics a lot on SATV shows, but we don't talk enough to ordinary people with interesting jobs or hobbies or lives. We have a lot of politicians on the air, but not enough ordinary people. So most of our guests will be ordinary people here with stories to tell, and I'm really looking forward to sharing them with you. Today, though, our first guest is not an ordinary person. In fact, he recently became a politician. In fact, now he's the mayor of Salem. So today I would like to welcome Dominick Pangallo to my first show. Dominick, thanks for finding a little time to sit down today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Josh. Appreciate it.
So
Congratulations on the new show as well.
Yeah, congratulations on not being a politician. And,
well, that too.
Yeah, there you go. So I do have some questions that I want to run over with you, but and I'm going to ask a little bit about politics because you're a novice to the front of the ballot side of things. Mm-hmm. And so I'll say, what was it that really drove your interest in moving over to the actually being an elected official? I've known you for a long time.
Yeah.
And you've always been a behind the scenes, make things work, keep everything moving, stay out of the camera's way. Mm-hmm. So, what drove the desire to actually come up front?
Yeah, I talked about this a lot in the campaign. I felt really deeply that a lot of people had put in a lot of energy and time and hard work into making Salem the success story that it is. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I was part of that team and that I was uniquely well situated to be able to continue that work, step into the role on day one and continue moving the city forward, and that I had something to contribute, that I had the understanding of the issues, the projects, the people, what was happening in the community. I shared the values and the vision that had made Salem the success story that we are today, and that we wanted to make sure we were continuing that forward path. So I decided to step up and take a shot at it.
And you had enough masochism in you to decide to take a shot.
This is, I think probably that running for office is a grueling experience. Mm-hmm. Even at the local level, it's a big time commitment. It can be difficult with your family. It can be, it just takes up so much time. I give a lot of credit to anybody that decides to run for office, whether or not there's somebody I would vote for or that mm-hmm. I agree with. I think that if they're willing to stand for office, especially at the local level, where there's such high degree of scrutiny in a community like Salem, where people really pay attention to local issues. I give those folks a lot of credit for being willing to do that.
The one thing I will say I enjoyed from my time doing that was, believe it or not, the campaigning.
Yeah,
the actually going out and the knocking on doors and talking to people. And that was something that was terrifying to me at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And towards the end of it, that was one of the energizing parts. I
entirely agree with you. In fact, I came to enjoy the door-to-door canvassing that I was doing probably more than any other aspect of the campaign. I ended up knocking on about 6,000 doors over the course of the campaign. And the one-on-one conversations, the ability to connect with people, whether or not we agreed on, mm-hmm. on something, just having that kind of human interaction, that personal conversation with somebody, not behind a keyboard, not over the phone, not behind social media, but just really face to face, answering their questions or hearing their what their concerns and their worries were or what their hopes were for the city. That was what I enjoyed the most about the campaign, and really am hoping to kind of maintain that on the ground level engagement mm-hmm. with people one on one in those smaller group settings as mayor as well.
So, with that, now it's been just about not quite a month since you started.
This is day 25. I don't know when this airs, but we're recording this on day 25.
Yeah.
From this.
So as of now, it's not quite first day of summer. Mm-hmm. I got the dress memo for it.
Yeah.
You sadly did not. But
I did not. Yeah. I just came from the office.
So far, what is the difference to you? You've been an employee of the city for 10 years. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between this and being the boss?
The difference,
other than signing warrants.
Yeah, signing my name a lot. I signed my name more in the last couple of weeks than I think even when I bought a house, I didn't sign mm-hmm. my name as many times. I think that the degree of responsibility is certainly different, right? There's an expectation that you're not just executing the work anymore. You're now kind of setting the agenda and the vision. And one of the strengths that Salem has really benefited from over these past decades has been that kind of collaborative, shared vision that we've all been striving towards the same, objectives together, whether it's related to a particular project or just an overall value set for the community. So that, I think, there's less of an expectation that you're going to come in and, as a mayor and say, we're changing course. And I think one of the reasons, that I was able to win this job in the first place in the election was that there was largely a consensus amongst the people who did turn out to vote that that wanted to see Salem continuing in the same direction. A consensus among the majority, I should say. Yeah. And recognizing that not everybody voted for me and trying to rebuild those bridges with people in the community who may have had concerns about the fact that I hadn't served in elected office before and that I was first time as being a candidate here, or may have concerns about that value set or that vision, or feel like they're just not being included in the conversation, wanting to kind of rebuild those bridges. So just day to day, the biggest change from being the chief of staff to being the mayor is really just when you're the chief of staff, or particularly when I was the chief of staff working for then Mayor Driscoll, like you said, there was a lot of doing the work, right? It was a lot of behind the scenes executing, a lot of operational activity. And now I'm out and about. My schedule is back to back, meeting with community groups, meeting with residents, meeting with local businesses, lots of meetings with city staff and department heads, trying to get things onboarded and checking in on projects and things that I had last touched back in December or January when I left the chief of staff's job to campaign, and trying to make sure that they're still moving forward. So it's been back to back to back throughout most of the day. The first couple of weeks were the budget hearings, which, as can go late into the night. So the day starts 7:30 in the morning, and it would end at 10 or 10:30 at night when the budget hearings ended. So they were pretty grueling couple of weeks there, for transitioning in, getting established in the office, and then also just making sure that daily work was getting done. Has been
welcome to the corner office. Here's your budget.
Yeah, well, that was an interesting experience in itself. But that's probably been the biggest change, is just the time commitment. I'm used to having the time to sit down, write something out thoughtfully, do some deep reading on a particular issue or project. And it's just been back.
I guess it moves a lot faster.
Yeah. Kim used to say she wanted one more hour in every day, and I understand why. It's been a lot.
So, sort of tied to this a little bit, and then we'll kind of move to, what's next. I know there were a lot of balls in the air as the old administration shut down and you went off into campaigning mode and all that. And now that you're in there, are you, and I don't need specifics because it's been less than a month. Are there things that were happening under the previous administration that you were part of there that you're now looking at from here and saying well, maybe we have to take a different tack on this, or maybe we have to maybe this project is not what I thought it was going to be when we were working on it, and we got to do something differently, or?
Yeah, I don't think that there's wholesale differences of direction. Like I said, when I chose to go to move back to Salem with my wife, and I decided to move back, and I took the job working for Mayor Driscoll then, it was because I shared her vision for what the community could be, and I felt, I wouldn't have come back for any other community. It was my hometown, but also wouldn't have come back for probably any other mayor. It was, I thought the direction that the city was heading in and was the right one. That being said, I think there's opportunities to start shaping things in different manners. And just to give an example that I talked about a little bit on the campaign trail, which is, not disagreeing that we have a housing crisis. We need to right size our housing supply. We can be pro-growth in a way that's responsible and thoughtful, and has the guardrails that are appropriate. But we have to also, I think, start taking more responsibility as a city and thinking about housing as less of a building problem and more of a people problem, right? The time it takes to create housing and to right size our supply, it's not going to happen fast enough for the families that are in crisis right now and the seniors that are in crisis right now. So I want us to start working more intentionally as a city in developing a human services model approach to connecting people with services, many of which are already funded. They're programs to which people are entitled that they either lack access to or lack awareness of, and making sure that, when a social worker at the Council on Aging is assisting somebody, they're also communicating with our food security people and communicating with our housing assistance people, so that that person, that Salem resident, is getting every single benefit to which they're entitled, to help them be able to afford to live in Salem, keep a little bit more money in their pocket, and be able to remain in our community. And that's part of the way we also address the housing crisis. It's not just through zoning. Zoning is
No, it's not
important.
just one
It's not
tool.
just through projects. Projects are important, but it's also through those service approaches.
Yeah, connect people to what they need in order
Yeah.
to thrive, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So, only a little bit more about the day job for you. But so in this year, since New Year's, we've had not just one transition, but two administration transitions. So I'm curious about this one. What kind of issues came up for you in the handoff on your way out previously? And then what has come up in the transition back in 5 months later?
I think so. It's interesting. The budget has kind of been the through line. The budget process in Salem starts in December, January, when the administration kind of sends their budget message out to the department heads with their guidance and expectations around what revenues may look like, what they're looking to shape in the budget to come, and then over the next few months, department heads meet with the finance staff and the mayor to develop the proposed budget. In this situation, we had one mayor going out, an acting mayor coming in, who then decided to become a candidate for mayor, and then another mayor transitioning in to finish the term after the special election. So the analogy that I had used during the first budget meeting with the council was Kim Driscoll picked the recipe, Bob McCarthy cooked it up, and I got to bring it to the table.
So you're an expediter.
There we go. That being said, the budget was presented to me a few days before it was filed. It was filed after the election, but before the swearing in. And then after the inauguration, the very first day, business day in the office, that Tuesday was the first day of budget hearings. So I had about 48 hours to digest what was in that budget. And it was fine. It's mostly continuity of services. There's no major changes.
No.
But I would have loved the opportunity, I think, in retrospect, to maybe have the chance to shape it a little bit more, get my fingerprints on it. And there's still chances, as you know, after the budget's filed, you still can make changes to it, through council actions. But that was probably the biggest. That was the biggest, most strangest thing was the timing and the overlap of the election with the budget. The staff is super professional. We're lucky in Salem to have some great people, both on our boards and in the departments, who I think were committed to maintaining continuity of services, to continuing projects on. They were waiting for some direction on a few things, and there are a lot of things happening in our community that are not being driven by the city, but that we have some role in. The offshore wind project, for example, they're still continuing on their permitting path. Avangrid's going through their process with the procurement with the state, and it's not going to wait for the next mayor to come in. So it's something that was kind of just cooking.
No, everything
along.
that's in progress stays in progress.
Yeah, but there was, you're not wrong. We were in a situation of having one mayor for 16, 17 years, an incredible degree of stability in this community. Like Salem was known around the Commonwealth as a city, as a municipality that had a large degree of stability and predictability in its leadership. To go from that to 6 months of significant transition between acting mayor and special election is disruptive. And it creates some degree of anxiety amongst staff. It creates some degree of hesitancy to advance projects, or want to wait and see what direction we're going to go in. But I'm hopeful now that we're kind of past that point. My administration's transitioning in. We have some resolution in the budget process. We're ready to kind of get moving on things.
Good. So, first off last on this particular track is just a simple question. Is there anything else that you kind of want to get out about this, this strange new job that you just started? Before I get to the meat of the interview.
Right, not this, not the boring stuff, right? I think in my previous role as chief of staff, I had limited involvement in the schools. Mayor Driscoll was very engaged as the chair of the school committee, but also as the mayor in the work in the school. So having had the opportunity to step into that role, chairing the school committee, but more importantly, being a champion for the schools. I'm a Salem public school parent. My kids are at Bates and Collins. It's actually their last day today, so very excited for summer vacation. But it's something I've really relished. My parents are public educators, so the chance to work with the staff and the schools and the teachers, it's work that I'm just stepping into now, but really enjoying. My first 24 days, I went to 6 different graduation or moving on ceremonies, and it was something. It was
Those are
really
nice.
special. They're nice. Those were the highlights of the day, to be able to kind of celebrate and mark those occasions. But it really also renewed my excitement about everything that's happening. our early education programs, early college, CTE, the middle school pilot, what's happening with the high school building project. This all exciting work that I'm really looking forward to getting into.
Well, and then hopefully discussing schools as little as possible when you're at home, other than what the kids are doing, since you have another elected official in the House.
Yeah. I'll say in the last 3 weeks we've not seen much of. We've not crossed paths much, except for school committee meetings, ironically enough.
So that's when you get to see her.
Yeah.
Great. So now to the main topic here, because I know you have a lot of interests outside of the area of politics, and in particular, you are a devoted gamer. And so,
time allows.
as time allows, so we know about
Casual, yeah.
So as to the to the audience, I will say I will give the big reveal, which is that Dominick, for the last I think about 5 years or so that we've had the game going. Yeah, we've had Dominick has been running a Dungeons and Dragons game that I play in for the last 5 years or so. We've done a couple of campaigns, including on Zoom through COVID and in person and however. And it's not the only game that he's been running. He runs quite a few of them. So what got you into doing this? What got you into gaming?
I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was in middle school.
Okay.
Just my group of friends. It was just, I don't even remember who introduced it to us, but we just started playing as a social activity, and then into high school, and then stopped really in college. Just didn't have the time, didn't find a group that was also into it. For those who know Dungeons and Dragons, in that period of time, like there were multiple editions that came out. There were some that bombed. There were different versions of the game. And it was never really something I got back into until shortly after I moved back to Salem. I reconnected with my old middle school and high school friends by email, and we started talking, and we started playing a game by email, which is torturously slow.
I was to say that's even slower than ours,
took
probably.
Forever. And then we finally got some in-person games when everybody was back in town for holidays. And then I had the opportunity, when my kids got older, I got them playing it. They loved it. We still play some games, and then I thought, I should be playing this in person with people in Salem that I want to hang out with. So we got a group together, gave it a shot. A couple of the players had played before. A couple were new to the game, and it kind of stuck. Got through COVID. Thank you, Zoom.
I was the only person who was entirely new to it.
Were you the only one?
No, I played in the '80s. So
no, okay, yeah. Well, let's see. Did Al play before? I don't know.
No, he was a rookie.
He was a rookie. Yeah. So it was fun, and I think this is going to be like a nerd talk thing, but so Dungeons and Dragons is now in its 5th edition, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, a simplified rule set. It's a little easier for people who are coming into the game new, and that helped with my kids, and I think it helped also introduce some of the new players in our group to the game. And we didn't play at a regular cadence, as you know, but it was fun. We enjoyed it.
We did play at a regular cadence when it was on Zoom.
Yeah, that helped.
Because we had nothing else to do.
Yeah, we were all sitting around. But I think this job has been very time consuming, and I'm disappointed that I haven't had more time to we finished one quest, and I wanted to get another one going. But I'm still playing with my kids. We have a game going with their cousins, and then a game that's just me and my 2 daughters.
So have you been doing any other role-playing games besides Dungeons & Dragons, or are you mainly sticking to that?
I've stuck to that, but it's not out of like any kind of deep, passionate commitment just to Dungeons and Dragons. I just haven't had the opportunity to try other games. I ended up being the DM, so it just became a very time-consuming process just to run those. I'm actually playing as a character now with the same group of high school friends. We play on Zoom instead of by email now, so that's a nice break to actually get to be the player instead of the dungeon master. But I've not had the opportunity really to try other systems, but I'd love it.
I was going to ask you, do you like, because you've run our game and you run the family game, so do you enjoy just settling down and being a player and just being able to react to stuff?
Yeah.
Or
Definitely.
because I know I know one of the complaints that you've had in our game particularly
What are you talking about?
is you came up many times with very elaborate plans for a particular session that we would completely obliterate by not doing anything you expected us to do.
I learned, so this was apparently a veteran dungeon master tip, which is don't over-prepare because everything goes sideways and they end up doing something different. So there's a degree of, you need to be able to improvise and just think about, the context of the situation. So, but being a player as opposed to being a DM, much easier.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Much less preparation involved. But the best games are games where the dungeon master is also enjoying it as much as the player is, and I feel like that's a box I could check for the group that we were playing with.
So, and I know you said you have games going with your kids and with your kids and their cousins.
Yeah.
I know your brother has appeared in our game periodically.
Yeah.
Sometimes in person, sometimes via Zoom, and I think in the final game of the quest, he appeared via FaceTime.
Yes, as Strahd.
Yeah, as the Devil Strahd himself,
yes.
And
Empire Lord.
His accent was really one that somebody who's into theater would do.
You could tell he was a theater guy, right?
Yes, you could tell that the kid that you may be twins, but the interests are not quite identical.
So he's the DM for the game with my high school friends that we're now playing on Zoom. So
okay, so he's in that one.
I did that for a few years, and then that quest ended, and I decided it was time for someone else to do it, and he was happy.
Who just happens to look just like you.
Yeah, it's not confusing at all.
So curious here. I know your kids, as they've been with our game. They've been teeny tiny when we started this, and now they're both. You have a middle schooler and a elementary school kid. So do you think they're really embracing playing the games, or do you think they're humoring Dad? Oh
no, I think they're embracing it.
Okay.
My oldest daughter, she played it through the Salem Public Library. Had a club going during COVID. They were on Zoom, but she was into that. She played it with her friends at school. They love playing it with their cousins. Whenever their cousins come out, even if it's just half an hour, we have to try to squeeze a session in and just get one encounter done so they can have that. So they really enjoy it. They have the books. They love reading through them and flipping through them.
So and as a kind of related question to it, do you find it easier to run the game with the kids or with the adults?
Oh, I think they're challenging in different ways.
Well, that's a good cop-out. I appreciate that.
Really, I think that so Dungeons and Dragons is about cooperative storytelling. Really, at its core, it's problem solving. There's math elements. There's the high fantasy. There's the dragons and all that. But really, it's about having a good time together.
We've been playing for 5 years, and we've had one dragon.
One dragon, I know. It was a
and
total party kill.
And
I
you
should
nerfed him.
Yeah, I should have wiped you out. Anyway, I get off track here. It's a cooperative storytelling, right? And so with the younger players, you don't want to. I've come to learn that it's less about really getting into the rules. Like if you're talking to them about proficiency bonuses and armor and armor class and your spell components and everything, you're going to lose them, right? They're there to have a good time too. So it becomes almost more of a storytelling exercise with them, and that makes it less of a challenge, right? If you're sitting there trying to map out how far the range of that spell attack actually is with the kids, then
as opposed to just cast the spell,
right? Yeah,
see what happens.
We'll describe it and we'll have fun with it. Yeah.
So in doing this, you've run 2 campaigns with us adults. You've run a bunch with the kids. So what is the most enjoyable part of running a campaign? Is it just dealing with group dynamic? Is it the world building? Is it the development, the character development?
The jokes at the table are fun, whether it's kids or adults. The laughs are definitely the highlight.
This is fair.
Because it's a chance to have fun with everyone.
Yes.
I think surprising play, when you're a DM, if you have the chance to legitimately surprise players with something that they didn't see coming, that's always a blast. Whether it's a non-player character that pops up that no one expected, or it comes back that nobody expected, or you make a connection for something that happened many sessions back, and they recognize that, or they problem solve something and discover that. I think that's that kind of joy of surprise is the highlight.
So the constant pulling something out of the hat is
Yeah, yeah,
sort of the fun part there.
it is.
So what kind of you've been playing this particular game and different campaigns within it, and each Dungeons and Dragons, just to kind of explain to people, Dungeons and Dragons is more for those who aren't doing it, which is probably most of the people who are watching this, it's a set of rules, it's a parameters under which you operate a game, but each campaign that you do is an entirely different game within the context of it. And that can go on for a couple of sessions or for years, depending on how you do things. So, so with that, have you looked at I don't know, we talked about this a little bit, have you looked at other similar kind of role-playing systems as an idea, or considered adding on to it, or?
I haven't really, just because the opportunity
campaigns
hasn't presented itself. There's other systems out there that are also, I think, really popular, that I would love to dabble in and try. I just don't have the time these days to do it. What I have
free
done,
time?
I know,
What?
imagine that. What I have done is, particularly with my my friends from school, when we started playing by email and then on Zoom, was creating my own. So instead of following a pre-printed adventure from from Dungeons and Dragons, it was a homebrew, what they call homebrewed world. So it was, I made up the world, I made up the characters, the story, and kind of let them loose in it, and that was great fun. Required a lot more work than just opening up an adventure book and being like, let me describe what this building looks like to you. So
Yeah, having to actually figure out what the building looks like in order to describe it.
right, and the history behind it and how it plays into the characters' experiences. It was very satisfying. It was also just a lot of work.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. So I guess one of the things that I think of a little bit that gaming brings to people is, and I think this is my take on it, I think one thing that we get is adaptability out of it. And it's sort of training to sort of handle things on the fly, or be able to deal with a change in plans, or some of it, there's a big difference between having having to deal with a vampire popping up in a castle, and say tens of thousands of fish washing up on the shore suddenly one day, which, by the way, for those who has what happened today. But I think there's some mental training that you get in playing games of this nature that sort of help you adjust to rapidly changing circumstances.
Yeah, I think there's the value of developing adaptability, flexibility. That's definitely a benefit of this kind of hobby. But it's only one benefit. I think there are other things that I've enjoyed from playing role-playing games and Dungeons and Dragons, and I would hope that other people do as well. But it's
Please elaborate.
I mentioned them. I think the cooperative nature of the storytelling makes it so that you're sharing something with others. The problem solving, you have a set of resources available to you, whether it's magic spells or tools or your weapons and armor or whatever it may be, and you're trying to problem solve a particular
Bags and
challenge.
bags of Electrum.
Yeah, whatever, right? Electrum, what good is Electrum? You're trying to solve that problem, and you're doing it in cooperation with other people. That's, I think, a very satisfying experience. And there's really just fundamental concepts of storytelling and narrative that are baked into every good Dungeons and Dragons quest.
Mm-hmm. So to whiplash you back to today a little bit.
Yeah.
So as we said, so you're a month into operations here, approximately. Mm-hmm. I know that as of today was the day the July 4th plan announcements went out, or went online at least. So what do we have ahead of us over the next few months? We've got where I know we're going to come into, it was a big topic during election season, of course. We're going to come into the tourist season, which for the most part seems to have already started, and it's June.
Yeah.
What lies ahead?
Yeah, I think, our tourism economy is pretty vibrant year round. October is certainly the high water mark, but I think as we've discovered, it starts early and it kind of persists longer than it has in the past. So being prepared for that over the summer months, we want to make sure that we're equipped to welcome people and manage the visitors that are arriving here to enjoy our community. 4th of July is a big event. It's always fun. We have a new superintendent at the Park Service. I've had the opportunity to talk with her and get to know her a little bit over the last few weeks. And I'm a new mayor, so there's a lot of kind of new about the 4th of July. So I'm hoping for good weather, and it'll be a fun celebration. On the city side, we're ending the fiscal year, so there's a lot of kind of budgetary stuff that's wrapping up.
Closing the books
on the fiscal year, getting ready for the new one. A lot of the capital projects that were funded in the FY24 budget that just passed are going to start ramping up in July as those funds become available. We're going through the process of winding down our ARPA program for COVID relief and trying to identify what funds are available still and programming those before the federal deadline ends for being able to use them. And really the other big thing is by the end of June, we have to name the building committee for the new high school building project. And that's, I think, significant. It's going to be not only a major capital expense, but a transformational project for the nature of Salem Public Schools, how our grades are structured, how our schools operate, and how we're preparing our learners and our children for the future after they leave high school for future generations. So I want to make sure we're being very thoughtful about who's on that committee. And,
high schools don't get rebuilt often.
They don't. So we want to make sure we're doing it right, and we're doing it in a way that's forward-looking. So we have a school that serves our staff and teachers and our students and our school community overall from a technology perspective, from a health and wellness perspective, from a curriculum and education perspective, from a safety perspective. There's just a lot of moving pieces there. And I think the first step of that is coming up by the end of this month when we have to name the building committee.
And then one more thing to bring up for this chat at least is, and it's been going on since I was on the council when you were in the side office. So we've had a lot of issues in trying to get our agreed upon internet provider into Salem. That's been a engineering mess with issues that they had. They wound up in lawsuits with their contractor. I have no idea where that stuff is because I haven't seen any follow-up lately from on that side. But I know that's been very disappointing because we signed them on at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018 originally to do this. And there was a lot of preliminary engineering that took place, and they had financing issues getting stuff into place. But there have been a few times where it seemed like we were just poised to get cranking, and then for whatever reason, for a lot of different reasons, it hasn't. So have you had a chance to try and interact with them and get things on track and or find other potential vendors to come in and offer competitive service in town, even if these guys do ultimately fall through?
Yeah, I mean, when we started that process, the agreement was 2017, 2018. But the kind of planning process that led to that agreement was even earlier than that. And when we started on this journey, the world of high-speed internet, fiber, 5G, it's all so different now than it was in 2015, 2016, that I think it's worth reassessing, how are we going to provide or help provide this service to residents and businesses and what that looks like. I think the project that was envisioned it's not completely off the table, but there's a lot of challenges ahead. There's some engineering challenges with the micro-trenching technology that they wanted to utilize. There's some things that need to be worked out in terms of the development agreement between the city and the company, which has since expired. It would have to be reauthorized. So I think there's still a lot of questions about whether or not that's the best approach or necessarily, to your point, the only approach. I think that there's other options that we might have available to us. What I do know is that, I think, the nature of this technology has changed dramatically. People have, businesses rely on the ability to access high-speed internet in such a different way now than they did even 5 or 6 years ago. People working from home.
It's even more critical now than it was 5, 6 years ago.
Correct. So I think that it's got to be a high priority. And there's I think the other big change that's happened in this space is there are new federal resources available for these kinds of projects, and that I think we need to be taking a hard look at what kinds of opportunities are out there to leverage those to potentially expand connections through funding resources available through those pools of money before they're gone.
Okay, and then one last city-related question that I will ask because it's something that's in my own interest here. We have not, and I know the reasons, and I've communicated them off. We have not been able to get that final step in redoing Canal Street and all the flood prevention done. I know the cost multiplied exponentially, and that's the biggest issue there. We do have the authorized amount to borrow for it, but it's not going to take care of it. Is that something that hopefully is going to come back on the table to, try and get a solution identified? I know that sort of fizzled out.
Yeah.
Some of the work on that.
So the first phases were complete, and they didn't provide no benefit. They provided some degree of improvement.
Substantial benefit.
I think that without the pump station and the holding tank, the really substantial storm events are still going to continue to overwhelm the parking lot in that particular area of Canal Street. And we have to make a judgment about, is it worth tens of millions of dollars to provide protection to that parking lot and to that area? Or are there other, just like with the high-speed fiber, are there newer systems or newer ways of providing resiliency and flood control to that area that may not require $30 or $40 million? And I know Salem State has an interest in maybe making some use of that parking lot in a way that can, just to fix it. And so they're anxious to, I think, see some finality in what that's going to look like. And right now we need to fill the role of city engineer, and I think this is a high priority project for the next person that comes in, is to understand what can we do with what kind of funding is available, because the resiliency projects that we have to address in this community are substantial. And there isn't really there's no cavalry coming. There's some funding in the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, but we need to start prioritizing and going after that and thinking about how are we protecting our most vulnerable populations, our most critical assets that are along the water, and preparing ourselves to withstand the impacts of the climate crisis, and what parts of the city need to be priorities for that.
Yeah, just in my neighborhood alone, we've got the park where we've done resilience work already over at Palmer Cove. We've had that, but we have seawalls that have issues. We have the sewer pipe.
Yeah,
that's above ground, and I know that's
I would put that as a higher priority than the Canal Street tank at this point.
I'd agree at this point, because, and I'll say a lot of the work that happened over the last decade on Canal Street has reduced the degree to which we have the problem on Canal Street, and the property issues. There's still issues. I mean, it's not completely better, but it's much better in almost all conditions. Right. And so that has definitely, but we have other neighborhoods that are really under siege from the water. Collins Cove, there's been resiliency work done there. That's with the seagrass expansion and the other mitigation that's been done. We have other neighborhoods where we've done mitigation, but there's still a lot to do, I realize.
Yeah. And one of the benefits of the Resilient Together plan is that it's allowing us to prioritize that work and identify the action steps and the funding mechanisms to make it possible. So, like the Palmer Cove work was largely through Resilient Together, the El Punto study, and the work on Collins Cove is kind of the next phase of that, as we work around kind of the coastal areas of our community where we want to make sure we're investing capital and also the planning necessary to try to withstand the worst effects of the climate crisis the best we can.
Such an interesting job to do at the moment.
I wish I had more time for Dungeons and Dragons. My kids wish too. They love playing it.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
so
I'll make the time.
All right. So that was a really good talk. I'm glad because we don't get to see you at the D&D table very often nowadays. So glad to get you in here to talk about this stuff. So thank you for coming on and being guest number one of show number one.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.
Hopefully you have a uneventful next couple months. Hopefully we even get a game session in at some point.
going to try for it. We'll see
I
what
figured
we
I
can do.
would. I figured
You're
I
gonna make
could
the
use
pitch?
this to leverage.
Right,
and
it's
make
on
the
tape,
pitch.
so you can't.
Exactly.
Right.
We're recording it, so we know it's out there. Can't just be like by us. We can't even get away with threatening to vote for other people now.
We'll find a time for it. I want to get back into it.
Excellent. Perfect. All right. Dominick, thank you for coming on.
Thank you,
Being
Josh.
guest number one. It's good to have you. This was the first of what will hopefully be many episodes of Salem Connections. And I'm Josh Turiel. Thanks a lot. And see you all soon.